Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. Today's video will cover how to draft a pieced border using Electric Quilt. Last week, we put together the center of the Let's Go Fly a Kite quilt. Now I'm ready to add borders. And so I know I want to put a pieced border in, but I want some sort of spacer. And I'm going to have to figure out that size for the spacer, but I'm going to start by first of all just adding, the default is 1 inch, so I'm just going to use that for now. Now, I know I want a pieced border, but I want the width and the height of my blocks and my pieced borders to be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and add a second border, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to select tile squares. And when you do tile squares, it will ensure that the height and width are the same, and it will add spacers to make sure that it works. Now obviously these are way too large for the size of quilt, but I can just up the number of blocks in the border until I get to a size that is a little bit more appropriate for my particular quilt. I'm liking that, and it's saying 2.75, which is a little strange, but I'm seeing that there's a spacer in there. So I want to see what it is without the spacer. So if I select the spacer and I do a File, Print, Block, it is telling me that the spacer is 1/4 inch. So now I'm going to go back to my borders and I'm going to go to that inner border and I'm just going to add 1/4 inch. And I can just do that by clicking 1 to the right on the slider bar, and it will change all of them to 1 1/4. Now you can see that my borders have my spacers have disappeared. So if I go back to the tile square, it's going at 2.5 inches. Now I really like that because that will work well with all of my rulers. I am going to go ahead and change this back to blocks, just because if I make changes I don't want to have any more spacers coming in. And I'm going to go ahead and add a third border, and I'm going to go ahead and insert 2.5 in the dialog box and then just click on the slider bar below that, and it will add that to all of the spaces. Now if I go to layer 1, I can see I have an inner border, a pieced border, and an outer border. Now we need to come up with the block for the pieced borders. So I'm going to select the Work on Block button, and I'm going to do a block, new block, easy draw block. And for this, I want to make sure that my width and my height are both 2.5 inches. And I'm going to set my snaps to 10. And how I calculated that was I took the width of 2.5 times 4, and that would mean that I would snap every 1/4 inch. So I'm going to use 10 by 10, and I'm not going to turn on the graph papers. And for snapping options, I'm going to make sure Snap to Grid Points is turned on. So for this, I'm going to just draw a diagonal line, and then I'm going to do another diagonal line from the one on the vertical to the one on the horizontal. So now I can go to the Color tab. I'm going to make the outsides white, and then on the inside I'm going to just use one of my fabrics, and I'm going to go ahead and add that to the sketchbook. Now I can go back and work on quilt, and I'm going to select the set block. I'm going to navigate over to the block I just drew, and I'm going to use the Control key and select one of my border block spaces, and I'm going to do the same with the corner. Now this will get me all of the blocks filled. I do need to go ahead and do rotations because I want them to be, I want every other block to be offset. And I'm just going to do it by clicking on each of the blocks and moving it into the rotation that I want. So the first one I need to click 3 times. The second is OK. So every other one on that top row basically needs to move, have 3 clicks on it. And that is done. Now for the next one, every other one will be clicked once. And so I'm just going to go and click every other one. And there's no need for the alternate ones because those actually look pretty good. For the bottom row, I'm going to click the first one twice and the second one once. So 2, 1, 2 clicks, 1 click. And for the last one, the first one is okay, but the second one just needs to be clicked once. And if you click too many, you just sort of need to keep clicking and go back to that first rotation. Okay, I think that looks good. So now I'm going to click on the paintbrush tool and go ahead and use the control key and select one of the long horizontal borders and do the same for the inner border. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to the borders. I'm going to add a binding and I'm going to make that 0.25. Click on the slider bar and now go back to layer 1. I will zoom in and I'll go ahead and select that, zoom out, and I am going to go and recolor all of these kite tails. Now all of my kite tails have been colored, and so I can go ahead and add this to the sketchbook and I can save my file. Thanks for watching. For additional tips and tutorials, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.